She kicked the old woman out of her house, only to find her in the family photos. What started as a simple act of kindness spiraled into a nightmare as Jenna discovered the horrifying truth lurking beneath the surface. What was the old woman's true connection to the house? And what happens when you take a place that never lets go? It started with a fight over a front seat. The sky was a smudgy gray when Jenna stepped out of the airport, her boots clicking against the concrete as she dragged her suitcase behind her. She was exhausted, 3 hours late thanks to a delayed flight, and already annoyed from the moment her phone died mid-text. But when she saw Kyle's car pull up, her boyfriend of 2 years, her irritation melted, replaced by a soft smile. That was until she opened the passenger side door and found an old woman sitting there. Jenna blinked. The woman looked like she'd been plucked from another time. Gray hair coiled into a neat bun, skin pale and papery, long fingers folded over a faded leather purse resting on her lap. She was staring straight ahead, hands still, lips tight. She didn't even glance at Jenna. Excuse me?" Jenna asked, trying to mask her confusion with politeness. No response. She looked over at Kyle, who had just stepped out of the car. He was already pulling her suitcase into the trunk, his eyes avoiding hers. "Hey," she said a little sharper. "Why is there someone in the front seat?" Kyle glanced at the woman and forced a tight smile. "Oh, she needed a ride. I picked her up at the bus stop on my way here. Thought I'd drop her off nearby." Jenna squinted. "You gave a random old lady a ride?" She looked lost. "I didn't want to leave her standing in the rain." That might have been sweet, if not for the fact that the woman was still completely silent. She hadn't looked at Jenna once. Her eyes remained fixed forward, unblinking. "Okay," Jenna muttered, frowning. "But shouldn't she sit in the back?" "Jenna," Kyle said in a low voice. "Just get in, please." Jenna hesitated, a sour taste rising in her mouth. She wasn't usually the type to make a scene, but the woman's presence made her skin crawl. There was something unnatural about her stillness, like she was pretending to be human but wasn't quite sure how. Without thinking, Jenna opened the passenger door again and said firmly, "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to move to the back. This is my seat." Nothing. Hello. Still nothing. She was beginning to lose her patience. "Can you at least look at me?" Finally, the woman turned her head. Very slowly. Her eyes were a milky shade of blue, like ice or fog, and they locked onto Jenna's with an expression she couldn't place. Anger? Disappointment? Well, something else. It lasted only a second. Jenna stepped back, unnerved. "You know what? I'll sit in the back," she muttered, slamming the door and walking around. She caught Kyle giving her a look through the rearview mirror, but he didn't say a word. The ride was silent. No one spoke for the next 10 minutes. The only sound came from the tires rolling over wet asphalt and the occasional click of the windshield wipers. Jenna kept her eyes on the back of the woman's head. She still hadn't moved. Not once. She sat rigid and upright like a wax figure. And then, she whispered. Jenna flinched. She couldn't hear the words, but she was sure she'd heard something. Low, guttural. A breath of sound that seemed to come from deep within the old woman's chest. She leaned forward slightly. "Kyle, did she say something?" Kyle's hands tightened on the wheel. "Just ignore her." Jenna blinked. "Ignore her. He's in our car." "What did she say?" "I don't know. It's fine. We're almost there." They pulled up to a quiet cul-de-sac. Kyle slowed the car near the corner, and the old woman opened the door before he came to a full stop. "No goodbye, no thank you." She stepped out, walked slowly toward the sidewalk, and vanished around the hedges without a backward glance. The second she was gone, Jenna let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "What the hell was that?" she asked. "I told you she needed a ride." "She gave me the creeps, Kyle. And you barely talked the whole way here. You gonna explain?" He looked straight ahead. "She reminded me of someone. That's all." "Who?" Kyle didn't answer. That night, Jenna unpacked in silence. She tried to let it go. Tried to ignore the image of that woman's face. and the way she whispered something that made her skin crawl. She told herself it didn't matter. People can be weird. Not everything is a horror movie. But things didn't feel right. The house was cold. Colder than she remembered, even though the thermostat said 72. Shadows seemed to hang heavier in the corners. The hallway to the guest room was dimmer than it should have been, and the framed photographs on the wall caught her attention, especially one in the center. It was an old photo of Kyle as a boy, maybe 6 or 7, standing next to a woman. Not his mom. Not his aunt. Someone else. Someone Jenna had seen just hours ago. Her heart skipped. The old woman in the photo was younger, yes, but the features were unmistakable. The shape of her face, the coiled hair, the way her eyes didn't quite smile even when her mouth did. Jenna grabbed the frame and stared at it, mouth dry. She ran into the living room. Kyle. Who is this? He looked up from the couch. What? This woman. In the photo. She was in your car today. Kyle stood slowly, eyes scanning the photo. His expression twisted. Confusion, fear, and something like guilt. That's not possible, he whispered. Don't lie to me. I'm not. That's my grandmother. She died when I was 10. Jenna felt the air leave her lungs. That's not funny, Kyle. I'm not joking. She stared at him, hoping for a smirk, a punchline, anything that would make it okay. But he wasn't joking. His face had gone pale. His hands were shaking. That's impossible, she said, voice small. Kyle nodded slowly. That's why I didn't want to say anything earlier. I thought maybe I was seeing things. But you saw her too. She was real. I touched the car door. I heard her speak. Kyle dropped onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. She shouldn't be here. She's buried in St. Mercy Cemetery. I watched them lower the coffin myself. Jenna couldn't move. The frame in her hands felt suddenly heavy. The woman's eyes in the photo seemed to look through her. And then thud. A sound from the hallway. Jenna turned her head slowly. A picture frame had fallen to the ground. Another family photo. Kyle's 6th birthday party. She could see the cake, the balloons, the smiling children. And there, in the far background, the old woman, standing in the corner, watching. Jenna dropped the frame. How many photos is she in? She whispered. Kyle didn't answer. They spent the next hour scouring the house, digging through albums, picture frames, even digital folders on Kyle's computer. She appeared in at least 16 photos. Always in the background. Sometimes clear, sometimes blurry, but always there. Always watching. I don't understand, Jenna whispered. Kyle looked at her. His eyes wide and full of something she hadn't seen in him before. Pure, unfiltered fear. She was obsessed with family. Said it was her duty to protect us, even after death. Jenna froze. You think she never left? Kyle didn't respond. That night, Jenna couldn't sleep. Every creak in the walls, every shift of the wind outside felt amplified. At one point she thought she saw a shadow move across the hallway. Too tall to be Kyle, too thin to be anyone else. And just before she finally drifted into uneasy sleep, she heard a whisper, close to her ear. You shouldn't have taken my seat. Jenna didn't tell Kyle about the whisper she heard in the dark. It was too specific, too precise. It hadn't been a creak or a groan in the house. It hadn't been her imagination. The words were clear. You shouldn't have taken my seat. It played over and over again in her head the next morning while she stirred her coffee, staring blankly out the window. The fog outside was thick and unmoving, smothering the neighborhood like a shroud. It clung to the windows, the trees, the edges of the roof, like it was waiting. Jenna hadn't slept more than an hour. She kept feeling something in the room. A heaviness pressing against the air, like someone was watching her from just beyond the wall. She'd even turned the closet light on and left it open, like a child afraid of the dark. But the fear hadn't gone away. Kyle joined her at the kitchen table, bleary-eyed and quiet. He didn't say much, just rubbed the back of his neck and stared into his own coffee. I want to know more about your grandmother, Jenna said suddenly. Kyle flinched. Why? Because she was in the front seat of your car yesterday. Because she whispered in my ear last night. Because she's in every damn photo like she's been watching you your entire life. Kyle looked away. She raised me. After my parents died. But something about her always felt off. Like what? She used to talk to the walls, he said flatly. Said she was keeping them company. She had this thing about chairs too. Nobody was allowed to sit in her chair by the window. Not even when she wasn't home. One time I did it by accident. Just sat down to tie my shoes and she screamed at me. Said I was trying to take her place. Jenna swallowed. That sounds. She believed she'd never leave this house. Even when she got sick. She told me once that she'd found a way to stay. Thought it was dementia. Now. He didn't finish the sentence. The silence stretched. Jenna stood abruptly. I need fresh air. Outside, the fog hadn't lifted. The air smelled metallic like old pennies and wet earth. She walked along the side of the house, hugging her sweater tight, but froze when she turned the corner. The back window, Kyle's old bedroom, was open. Curtains flapped lightly in the wind. She approached slowly, peered in. There was something on the floor. A framed photograph. It had fallen face down. She leaned in, pushed the window open wider, and climbed inside. He picked up the photo. Another family shot. This time the old woman was right behind Kyle. Her hand rested on his shoulder, though Kyle seemed unaware of it. The woman's face was caught in a half-smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. Her fingers looked off. Too long. Too thin. They seemed to stretch unnaturally down his shoulder like something trying to blend in but failing at the details. Jenna backed away, bumping into the desk. Another whisper. So soft it barely existed. But this time it wasn't behind her. It was in the walls. She pressed her ear to the drywall. Nothing. You don't belong here. She stumbled back, heart racing. Ran downstairs. Kyle was still in the kitchen, head in his hands. There's something in your house, she said. Something in the walls. He looked up, pale and exhausted. I know. They spent the rest of the day going through boxes in the basement, pulling out dusty old photo albums, journals, notebooks, anything that might explain what was happening. Kyle remembered his grandmother had kept a diary. A record of family history, she used to call it. Jenna found it inside a shoebox, tucked under a stack of worn Bibles. The cover was cracked leather, faded and dry. The pages were thin, some of them nearly stuck together. But the writing was neat, precise. Every page dated. Every entry methodical. She flipped through. May 3, 1997. Kyle spoke out of turn again. I worry he forgets who listens. June 10, 1997. The walls are alive tonight. Whispering louder. Hungry for presents. July 1, 1997. He sat in the chair that belongs to me. I can't allow disrespect. The entries grew darker. More fragmented. August 12, 1998. They keep asking for more. They want the line to continue. I offered my body, but now they ask for my eyes. September 6, 1998. The chair remembers. Keeps the seat warm. My soul is tucked inside. Jenna closed the book, shivering. She did something, she said. Some kind of ritual. She believed she could stay by binding herself to objects in the house. Chair. Photos. The walls. Kyle sat down heavily. I don't remember any rituals. But I remember she always said she'd never truly leave. She used to sit in that chair by the window for hours. Just staring out. Whispering. Where's the chair now? In the attic, he said. After she died, I couldn't bring myself to throw it out. But I couldn't stand seeing it either. Jenna nodded. Show me. The attic was colder than the rest of the house. Not just chilly. Unnaturally cold, like the kind of cold you feel standing at the entrance to a cave. The light overhead flickered as they pulled down the ladder and climbed up into the gloom. Dust hung in the air like ash. Old boxes, broken furniture, forgotten memories. And there, in the far corner, chair. It was simple, almost plain. Dark oak, high back, curved legs. But the cushion was faded red, and in the low attic light it looked almost like dried blood. The wood creaked faintly as they approached. Jenna stepped closer. The air around it was still, heavy. And then the chair creaked. By itself. No one touched it. Then whispers. All around them. You don't belong. This is my place. She took my seat. She took my place. Kyle grabbed Jenna's arm. We need to burn it, she said. Kyle hesitated. What if that makes it worse? Jenna didn't answer. She couldn't. She didn't know what rules applied to whatever this was. All she knew was that the chair was a link, an anchor. That night they didn't sleep. They locked the attic, turned up the heat, lit every lamp in the house. But the whispers kept coming. Unrelenting. From the walls, from the vents, from the mirrors. Kyle tried to ignore it, but Jenna couldn't. She felt the woman's presence in every room. When she closed her eyes, she saw those milky blue eyes. When she opened them, she sometimes glimpsed a shadow just disappearing behind a doorway. And then, at 3:14 a.m., the fire alarm went off. They ran to the kitchen. Smoke, thick and dark, was pouring from under the attic door. The chair! Jenna gasped. But when Kyle opened the attic, there was no fire, no smoke. Just the chair, now in the center of the attic floor, had moved. There were footprints in the dust. Jenna backed away. She's trying to come back. Kyle's face was ghost pale. They sealed the attic door with furniture and nails that night. But deep in the walls, something laughed. Jenna didn't dream anymore. Not since the attic. Not since the chair moved on its own. Every night since, her sleep had been replaced by a strange, waking paralysis. She would lie there, frozen, eyes wide open, unable to scream or move, as shadows shifted across the ceiling, and whispers crawled under her skin. One night, she swore she saw the old woman standing in the corner, half in shadow, half in memory, just watching her. She never told Kyle, because he was already slipping. He barely spoke. He didn't eat. He spent hours just staring at the walls. Once, she found him sitting at the foot of the attic ladder. His head tilted upward like he was waiting for something to descend. And the worst part. The old woman was showing up in more photos. Photos Jenna had taken herself. Like the selfie she snapped in the mirror, where the old woman stood behind her, grinning wide with no reflection. Or the Polaroid of Kyle asleep on the couch, where a frail hand could be seen reaching toward his face from just outside the frame. Jenna began to wonder. Was she losing her mind? Or was the house making sure she would? She spent a full day researching hauntings, spirit bindings, soul tethers. Most of it felt like nonsense. But certain words kept surfacing. Residual imprint, possession through objects, ancestral anchors. And always the chair. As if it were less of an object and more of a vessel. She made up her mind. That night while Kyle was asleep, if he really was asleep, Jenna went into the garage. She found a hatchet. Gas can. She climbed into the attic. The air felt colder than ever before, like a tomb of wood and dust. The chair sat where they'd left it, dead center like it was waiting. She circled it cautiously, then doused it in gasoline. Her hand trembled as she struck the match. The flame lit and died instantly. Like it had been swallowed. She tried again. Another match. Same result. And then the chair creaked. Not under her weight. Under its own. It leaned back slightly, as if reclining. And then a groan from within. Not wood. Not fabric. Human sound. Like lungs expanding. And from the shadows behind her, she heard the unmistakable scrape of feet. Low. She turned. And saw her. Not a vision. Not a ghost. A woman, corporeal. Real. Same eyes. Same fragile frame. Same dress from the photo. But her feet hovered slightly above the floor. And her mouth hung open far too wide. You took my place. Jenna stepped back. I didn't mean to, she whispered. We didn't know. The old woman drifted closer. Her mouth moved, but the voice didn't come from her lips. It came from the walls. The house remembers. The blood remembers. She lunged. Jenna screamed. When she woke up, she was back in bed. Kyle sat on the edge, staring at her. You went into the attic, he said. Her throat was raw. Did you bring me down? Kyle didn't answer. He just looked at her, almost confused. You don't belong here, he whispered. Jenna recoiled. What? She says you don't belong. His voice wasn't quite his own. The chair knows. The house told me. Jenna scrambled back. Stop it, Kyle. This isn't you. But his eyes were glassy, his expression slack. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an old photo, one Jenna had never seen before. It was a family portrait. Kyle as a child, his parents, and the grandmother in the center. But next to her was another woman. Same eyes as Jenna, same hair. She looked just like you, Kyle muttered. She tried to leave once. Grandmother made sure she couldn't. Jenna stared. Who is she? My aunt. Amelia. What happened to her? Kyle smiled, but it wasn't a smile of joy. She vanished. No one ever found her. Grandmother said she ran away. But Jenna knew better now. The house hadn't let her go. That night, Jenna couldn't stay in the house a second longer. While Kyle showered, she packed a bag. Wallet, keys, photos, the diary. She had just reached the front door when she noticed something strange. The family photos on the wall had changed. She leaned in. In the newest one, taken just last week, Jenna was smiling with Kyle. But now, there was a figure behind her. The old woman, grinning, closer than ever before. And in the next photo, even closer. Her hand on Jenna's shoulder. Jenna stumbled back, and the wall shifted. No, it breathed. She could feel it. She dropped her bag and ran. The house began to groan. The lights flickered. From the attic, a loud thud. Kyle screamed. She rushed upstairs. He was standing at the attic door, clutching his head, screaming, "Get out of me!" Jenna reached him just as blood trickled from his nose. His eyes rolled back. The attic door swung open by itself. Inside, the chair had changed. It was no longer just wood and fabric. Had veins. Had flesh. Something inside was beating. Slow, rhythmic, like a heart trying to remember how to die. Kyle collapsed. Jenna dragged him away, sobbing. But the voice followed. You kicked me out. You forgot the cost. Now take my place. The chair groaned again. Jenna slammed the attic shut. Nailed it shut. Salted the edges. 2 days passed. Kyle wouldn't wake up. Doctors said it was a seizure. Stress. Trauma. But Jenna knew the truth. He'd been touched by the house. Claimed by the chair. She found herself watching the mirror constantly. Checking photos every hour. The old woman was always there now. Lingering. Watching. And then one morning, Jenna looked out the window. The chair was on the lawn. Just sitting there. As if it had come for her. Jenna didn't open the door. She just stared through the narrow slit between the curtains. Heart pounding so hard it hurt. There it was. Chair. Sitting in the middle of the front lawn like someone had carefully placed it there. Bright. Well. Waiting. The same way the old woman used to sit. Hands folded. Head slightly tilted. Watching the world with those pale, unblinking eyes. Jenna's breath came in short gasps. It couldn't be. She had locked it in the attic. Nailed the door shut. Salted every inch. She stepped back. Closed the curtain. And that's when she noticed. The nails from the attic door were scattered on the floor. As if they'd been pushed out from the inside. Her hands trembled as she picked one up. A faint smear of blood coated the tip. Kyle was still unconscious. The doctors had no answers. The house refused to let an ambulance come. Every time she called, the signal would drop. Every time she stepped outside, the fog closed in, so thick she couldn't see the street. She had tried screaming for help. But no one ever passed by. No neighbors. No mailman. Not even birds. It was as if the house had removed itself from the world. Pocket of silence. A stitched-in scar on reality. She sat beside Kyle, brushing the hair from his forehead. He twitched in his sleep. Lips moved. But it wasn't his voice. She's waiting. Later that evening, Jenna knew she couldn't avoid it anymore. She needed answers, not guesses. Not fears. Truth. And the only place that truth might still exist was beneath the house. The basement. She had avoided it since the haunting began. Something about it had always felt off. The way the stairs creaked like they were sighing under unseen weight. How the shadows moved even when the lights were steady. She took a flashlight, salt, and the diary. And descended. The air down there was heavier than before. Like it had thickened. A stew of mildew, copper, and something older. The concrete floor was cracked in places. The walls wept moisture. But it wasn't just age. Jenna felt it. Like something pulsed through the space. She began examining the floor, remembering an entry in the diary that had mentioned marking the roots of the house. Near the back, under the wooden shelves, she found it. A strange symbol carved into the cement. Almost like a seal. A circle with jagged triangles inside. And at the center, a crude depiction of a chair. Around it, words in a language she didn't recognize. The ground beneath the symbol looked different. Newer. Like it had been disturbed. She pried at it with a crowbar. The concrete cracked easily. Too easily. It had been covered up, not sealed. She dug deeper until her fingers hit wood. She pulled it back. Trapdoor. It took all her strength to lift it open. The smell hit her first. Dirt. Below was a small cavity, maybe 5 feet deep. The bottom. Body. Bodies. One skeleton clearly female. Small, slumped forward in the fetal position. The skull still had strands of white hair clinging to it. But next to it, another. Molar. Arms broken. Legs twisted unnaturally. Children. Jenna's stomach turned. She staggered back, bile in her throat. She flipped through the diary with shaking hands, landing on an entry nearly a decade old. They didn't listen. The boy touched the chair. The girl mocked the rituals. The house needs discipline. Blood is the anchor. Flesh is the price. Jenna dropped the book. The old woman hadn't just bound herself to the house. She had fed it. The flashlight flickered. A sudden gust of cold air whipped through the basement, though there were no windows, no vents. Then came the voice. Right beside her ear. She knew. Just like you know. Jenna turned, and saw a face in the darkness. Her own. But aged. Hollow. Lifeless. A warning. She screamed and scrambled back up the stairs. But when she reached the top, the door slammed shut. The lights died. And from behind her, something began climbing the stairs. Creak, creak, creak. She turned and slammed her hand against the wall, blindly searching for the emergency panel. Her fingers brushed it, hit the switch. Nothing on the stairs. But at the bottom. The chair now sat where the bodies had been. Pray me. Except for a fresh smear of blood on the cushion. Jenna broke out of the basement, breathless. The fog outside had thickened, seeping through the cracks in the windows. She tried the front door again. She tried breaking the glass. Wouldn't crack. Every window now showed her reflection, but with the old woman standing behind her. Always closer. Always smiling. She collapsed in the hallway, whispering to herself, "This isn't real, this isn't real." But deep down she knew it was. The house had shown her everything. The children were sacrifices. The rituals were binding. And the chair was a throne. A vessel for something older than her grandmother. Older than anyone had known. That night Kyle finally woke up. But he wasn't the same. His voice was dry. He was pale. And when Jenna called his name, he tilted his head. "I saw her," he whispered. "In the chair." She said, "It's your turn now." Jenna backed away. "What?" "She says you took her place. You kicked her out." "I didn't know." stood. She remembers. The house remembers. And now, you must sit. He reached out, and Jenna's legs buckled. She fell to the floor, body suddenly cold, nerves unresponsive. Kyle dragged her toward the attic ladder. The door opened on its own. The chair waited. Jenna couldn't breathe. The cold was suffocating her, pressing down from all sides. She tried to scream, but her voice felt like it was locked in a cage, trapped inside her chest. Her body refused to obey, limbs stiffening as if they had forgotten their purpose. She stared at the attic ladder, her vision blurring as Kyle's face loomed above her. His eyes wide and glassy. He was smiling. But it wasn't his smile. It was the old woman's, twisted and gaping, as though her lips were stretched beyond their limits, too wide, too thin. "You're almost there," Kyle whispered, his voice no longer his own. It was the voice of someone or something that had taken him long ago. Jenna couldn't fight. The chair was there waiting for her, and she knew deep down, despite every desperate attempt to deny it, that the house had been waiting for this moment. Waiting for her to step into the trap. The chair called to her. It wasn't just an object. It wasn't just wood and fabric. It was alive. She felt her body moving despite herself. Her legs dragged forward, one step at a time, each one slower than the last. The sound of Kyle's breathing, ragged and harsh, was the only thing she could hear now. He was behind her, urging her forward with every step. "Sit. She's waiting. You have to sit." Jenna's eyes burned with the effort to blink, her consciousness fraying, the edges of reality warping. She felt it. Something was pulling her, drawing her closer to the chair, as though she were a puppet and the house had its hands wrapped tightly around her strings. When she reached it, her fingers brushed against the worn fabric of the seat. Felt like ice, cold and unforgiving. A tomb waiting for its next occupant. And that's when it hit her. The truth. The house had claimed her. The old woman hadn't just been a victim. She had been a vessel. A shell used to anchor the house's power, to tie it to the world. And now Jenna. Jenna was the new anchor. The old woman had never left. She had never truly disappeared. The chair had held her, kept her alive in a way, until it was time for the next. She had been marked the moment she'd taken that photo. The moment she had stepped into the house. She'd been chosen. "No," Jenna gasped. She tried to pull away, but the air itself seemed to be pushing her down. Kyle stepped forward and grabbed her arm. His grip was stronger than any human's should be. "Sit," he said, his voice monotone. "You can't escape it. You're already part of it." She looked at his face. His eyes so vacant, so hollow. And in that moment, she realized the horrifying truth. He had been here before. He had been claimed. The house had taken him, just as it had taken his grandmother. Just as it had taken every soul that ever dared to enter. "No," she whispered. "I won't." But Kyle's hand tightened around her wrist, and her knees buckled. She fell into the chair with a sickening thud, her body collapsing against the cold, unyielding surface. The moment she sat down, something shifted. The air thickened. The house groaned beneath her. She felt it. The chair began to pulse like a heart beating in the darkness, and a flood of memories rushed into her mind. The lives of those who had sat before her. The children, the parents, the grandparents. All their pain, their fear, their whispers, their last breath, all coiling around her. And the old woman's voice, inside her head, whispered, "Now you will stay." Jenna gasped, her skin turning pale, her mind splitting apart. She saw herself in the photos again. Saw the smile creeping across her own face as the old woman had once smiled. It wasn't a smile of joy. It was a smile of possession. But then something broke. Not the house. Not the walls. Not the chair. It was her. Jenna screamed, her hands clawing at the arms of the chair, trying to pull herself free. But it was too late. Her body jerked, uncontrollably, as though every part of her was rebelling against the bond that had already been made. The house's grip tightened, and she could hear the old woman's laughter. Not from the attic, not from the walls, but from inside her own mind. The chair groaned. The walls trembled. Then the whispering stopped. The world went silent. And Jenna, now forever a part of the house, understood the final truth. The house never lets go. The next morning, Kyle woke up, his eyes clearer than they had been for days. He blinked, unsure of where he was. His hand moved to his head, rubbing the lingering ache from the seizure, and for a moment, he looked around the room in confusion. But then he stood and something caught his eye. The attic door, it was ajar. And the chair was gone. The photos on the wall, the ones he'd taken with Jenna, had changed. In every single one, Jenna's smile was too wide, too much like the old woman's. And in every photo, her eyes were empty. Kyle's breath caught in his throat. He stumbled back, his chest tightening. The house had won. The house always won. Thanks for watching my story. Don't forget to subscribe for more terrifying tales.